program, women's participation in leadership and decision making continues to be limited, yet it remains a top priority or element for achieving gender equality. Now today on The Shift, we are going to be speaking to Phillipa Forsyth, a lady who saw it wise to start a consultancy firm on leadership training here in Uganda, and she emphasizes practical skills for leadership success. Join me as we speak to her. Welcome to the program, Phillipa.
Hello, Carol. Thank you very much for inviting me.
It's a pleasure for me to have you, talk about leadership for women, especially, So briefly, before you go any further, who is Phillipa Forsyth?
Okay. Well, I'm an English lady in Africa for 25 years. So
25 years.
That's right.
Wow.
Yeah.
Almost an African.
I am an African in my heart, definitely.
Yeah.
And my kids have been completely born and raised here. So we're a very African family. We came out here originally to Tanzania for my husband to work with Mission Aviation Fellowship, who flies small planes. But in my professional background, I came from British industry as a consultant and a trainer. So I came out with my own, giftings maybe. So I started in Tanzania, and then I had the most wonderful opportunity of moving here to lovely Kampala, and I have just loved it.
You must be enjoying it.
I love it here. It's been a really good move for me. We love the people, we love the weather. So maybe I started by thinking about what I could do, but you can tell that when someone comes out to Africa as a missionary, we're coming because we have a heart for service and wanting to do something that adds value and makes a difference.
Okay, so now for you, why the leadership? I mean, why did you think of that, of all things?
Well, I had one of those a Damascus Road experience, and I went on a visit to Australia, and one of the things that struck me there was that actually it's so hot and so barren, and yet you look around and there's all this development, and it really made me realise that that leadership is a critical issue. If you look at Uganda, we have here a better climate, we have lots of wonderful resources, we have lots of wonderful people, and yet somehow the productivity isn't quite up at that level yet. And so leadership is a really important issue because it's the leadership that makes the difference.
True about that. Now talking about the leadership team, you are the leadership team. Why are you emphasizing on ladies, women in leadership? Why did you choose to, have that gender bit of
Well, it just happens that we are quite a female team. So we're very passionate about women in leadership, and we do a special set of activities for ladies. But actually, we have had the women's empowerment sufficient to say that we're going to teach the men as well.
Yes. It's a good thing. Yeah.
Exactly. So we come in and work with many organisations, and so far we've got away with the ladies.
So they'll go ahead and empower the men.
Exactly. So that's the real side of women's empowerment, when a female leadership team is empowering the men.
All right. How many are you on your team?
We're small, so we have 4 full-time staff, and then we have a wonderful team of associates who come in and work with us on projects.
Okay. Now for the time, at least you've been in Africa. Yes, 25 years you mentioned. How have you found the leadership of women, especially in Africa? Hey, yes, comparing to the UK, how would you compare the leadership in terms of the women in leadership?
Well, I have to say that I have seen so many examples of fabulous women leaders, and I actually think that as women we've got it in us to really do a wonderful job. And Uganda boasts some wonderful ethical lady ministers, for instance, who are really doing a fabulous job and leading the way. You know, in the UK at the moment we have a lady Prime Minister who amazingly went to the same college at the same university as me, but she was there before me. Yes. So I think Britain has got a fairly well-established history of having both female queens in leadership and then having female prime ministers. I think to a certain extent Britain leads the world on that gender equality. I think there's still a perception that there's a glass ceiling for women, not as many women in the boardroom as we'd like, but my impression really, particularly having come out of British industry, is that there's a very high level of gender equality for me as a British woman. So for instance, the fact that I've got 2 daughters, no one thinks that that's a shame in Britain, and one of them's about to is studying to be a medical doctor, and so we've really got the expectation that if a man can do it, a woman can do it too. I think that Uganda's got that on the way coming, but you sure have got the role models, haven't you?
Yes, sure.
You have. You've got the role models.
Yes,
so
yes,
women are quite capable of doing an absolutely fabulous job. Now, when you look at the statistics of women in organisations, the statistics are very clear that a gender balance board is best. So actually for the leadership team we're concerned to make sure we have sufficient male gender balance, because balance is best. On the whole, men are more risk-taking than women are more cautious, and guess what, you need both.
Yes.
If the economy is booming, generally speaking, the men will forge ahead, take the risks and make the most of the opportunity. If there are threats on the horizon, generally speaking, the women will spot it and will put a contingency plan in place. So,
talking of gender balance in leadership positions, we have women who still fear to actually take on such positions. They still want to remain in the background. I don't know, they have that fear that holds them back. Speak to them. What would you advise them?
Okay, well, this is a really interesting topic, because it all comes down to what is leadership. And we see this a lot, I've seen it a lot in the church, all this arguing about whether leadership is male and whether women can we have women priests and things like that. If we say that the leader is the person who is responsible for the success of whatever enterprise the group is engaged in, and what the leader therefore has to do is whatever it takes to make sure that the team is successful, we start to see why women can be very good about it. So we have to ask ourselves, what is leadership? A lot of us see leadership as a path to personal glory and wealth, or leadership as status, and in our heads we see it as the leader is up and the people are down. If we reframe that and talk about success, then we start to see leadership far more as a servant role, that we're doing whatever it takes to be successful. And this is where our leadership tools start to come in, because there are 2 main parts of what does it take to be a leader. The first is you have to have a clear sense of direction. So what is it that you are trying to achieve? Do we know what success looks like? So I could go on forever about that. You can ask me a follow-up question if you want.
Sure.
One of the things that I think we often miss is that in most contexts, success is about delighting your customers. What does success look like? Then that's one of what we call our keys to success. So the first question is, what are you trying to achieve? The second question is, who are the customers and what do they want and need? And then your third question is, what does a good job look like? And this is another tip I'd love to leave with your women leaders, is that because of the internet, we now have unlimited access to discovering what a good job looks like. We never need to tackle anything from cooking pancakes to farming chickens. We never have to tackle anything without having a source of information on what does a good job look like. And yet very many of us launch ahead to try and do our leadership tasks without actually researching to find out what's best practice, what does a good job look like. And I would submit that that's a leader's job. Okay, so what are we trying to achieve? Who is the customer and what do they want and need? And what does a good job look like? And then as the leader, you've done that thinking on behalf of your team, and then you know where you're going. And that's one of the major things that people look to leaders for. What makes you want to follow? Carol, what makes you want to follow? If I interview you, what makes you want to follow someone?
If the person is trustworthy, the person is a hardworking one, intelligent, good reputation, why wouldn't I follow?
Exactly. Well, you might not follow if you don't think they care about you. Okay, if it's one of these people who's on the path to riches for themselves and they're using you as a step on the ladder to get there. So the second thing that's in here is what we technically call engagement. So are you an engaging leader? Do you care about the people that you're leading? Exactly. Do you care? If you got the impression that I'm on a path to somewhere really exciting and I really value your contribution, you're very likely to follow, because you can see that you're going somewhere that's exciting and you're going with a leader who really cares about you.
I'm sure our viewers right now are so inspired, especially those who want to be leaders. I mean, you've had the tips here. You can't go wrong with Phillipa.
Anyway, the thing I would like to say is that women are intuitively very good at this.
Sure.
And
there
we're
is a great improvement.
exactly no, we're just naturally good because we're less into world domination, and just in our personalities we're more into service and, like you've said, doing a good job and being diligent.
Yeah. And do you think society has contributed something to women's leadership? Because back in the day, I mean, it was tradition here and there. People would fear to go for leadership positions, the women. So what do you have to talk about our society today?
I actually have to confess that I don't really know where it's come from, but I think the critical thing is women's education. And I do believe that there has been donor support in funding women's education. Every NGO that we work with has a gender, they call it a cross-cutting theme, so there's a lot of work from the major donors in terms of gender equality, and the critical thing is women at school.
Men are educated.
We've got just such a wonderful lot of educated women, and again there's such a lot of statistics. I think the reason the major donors are bothered about it is that the statistics show that if women are literate, poverty reduces. I don't think people necessarily know why, but more educated women equals less poverty.
The numbers have increased, immensely increased today compared to back in the day. We see some women in big leadership positions, which is an inspiration. And talking about empowerment, how best would you make someone understand the word empowerment? I think some people misunderstand it in a way. How would you explain the word empowerment for a woman?
Yes. Empowerment isn't something that happens to you or that you wait for someone else to do to you. Empowerment is what comes up from inside you, and actually empowerment is a choice. Okay, so it's a choice that says, I choose to do certain things, and if I don't like what I'm getting, I change what I'm doing, instead of carrying on doing the same thing and then feeling like you're a victim and feeling sorry for yourself when you don't like what you're getting. There's a wonderful quote from Einstein who said, madness is doing the same thing and expecting a different outcome. If we don't like what we're getting, we have to change what we're doing. We have to see the relationship between our choices in terms of what we choose to do and how we choose to do it, and the consequences that arise from that.
Okay.
So it's to do with coming up with strategies and accepting the consequences. So
Talking of that empowerment still, we've seen some people getting difficulties or problems in families, especially the women and the men. The men are not appreciating, some men are not appreciating the empowerment bit of the woman. Instead of supporting it, they instead feel insecure about it. How would you advise them?
no, I'm so sad when people feel insecure when someone becomes an equal partner.
Yes.
And as I've already said about running a company, that there's very clear statistics that gender balance drives success. And you know, just think about it. If you face any challenge, what are you better with? Are you better with one person's idea on how to solve that challenge, or are you better with lots of ideas and lots of different perspectives? Which is going to make it more likely that you're going to make a better decision? And the answer is diversity is always better. But that's difficult, because if we're going to embrace diversity, we're going to hear things that we don't agree with. We're going to have these different voices. But the research is absolutely clear that the more we can listen and the more we can weave in all these different perspectives, the more likely we are to actually be successful. Is that if a woman feels that she's loved, she will do everything for the one who she thinks loves her. So if a husband isn't getting what he wants, if he just makes his wife feel loved, he's going to just have all of this showering of love back in return.
True.
It's just the way that women are made, isn't it? We love back, we love like a mirror.
Could you be having any role models as Phillipa?
I've had many very inspiring people in my life. I'm actually quite embarrassed to admit that growing up, Margaret Thatcher, the British Prime Minister, who I have to say is actually quite unpopular really, she was referred to as the Iron Lady, but you know, you can tell I'm an older lady growing up in the 80s, so I was at university when Mrs. Thatcher was the Prime Minister, and again she went to Oxford University and so did I, and she just took, for me and my generation, she took the lid off the glass ceiling. She just told a whole generation of British women, you can be the Prime Minister. There's nowhere you can't go. And I know that she, you know, if you even mention Margaret Thatcher to anyone who's Scottish, they're just like, oh, she's the devil. So, you know, they just hated her. She was called the Iron Lady, and she was desperately stern and strict. So people didn't like her very much, but for me, she was. It wasn't the way she behaved. It was the fact that she achieved, and it was just such a role model. And of course, likewise, as a British person, you've got to admire the Queen. And you know, we love our Queen Elizabeth, and she's a major leading British person. Caroline is also an inspiration for me, and one of the things that I want to make very clear is that actually there's two of us set up the leadership team, and much as maybe the original vision was mine, my colleague Caroline Boyjana, who is Ugandan, has done the majority.
Well, during interview with Phillipa, you must have heard this name often, Caroline. Actually, you are my namesake.
Yes, I am.
Yes, and Phillipa has talked so much about you, having started this with you. And now, briefly tell us, who is Caroline before we proceed?
Boyjana. I've been with the leadership team since 2012, and we set that up with Phillipa. And my background is human resources. Professionally, and graduated from university, and I've been working in Uganda for maybe 10 years, if not more. Yes.
Okay, so how has it been working with the leadership team? What's the feel? Are people appreciating your services?
I think, like Phillipa said, in Uganda, we started the leadership team to really want to bring have an impact on leadership in Uganda. And when we started, of course, we were a small firm. We had some clients who we knew in our separate networks. So we came together and we put this baby together, which has now grown.
So Caroline, how have you had all that experience so far? How would you advise a lady out there who would want to become a good leader, or who would want to be an entrepreneur? What kind of advice would you give them?
My advice would be to start. If you have a vision and you want to start a business, it's important to be very clear about what you want. I know that sounds very cliche, have clarity, and the honest truth is what you start out with and what you end up with might be two different pictures, because the reality is in entrepreneurship, you will have an idea, you will start it, but you will have to change it because nothing remains stagnant. I think be prepared to start the walk, but also be prepared to be flexible, to change, to accommodate change. We have learned over the years, Phillipa and I started, and we were very much, this is our space and this is what we want to do, but we have had to learn how to, one, ask for assistance when we needed it, two, recognize we have gaps, and you might have a core business that you're very good at, but you need help, you cannot do everything, and please do not try to do everything. You can't be the finance manager, the managing director, the customer service manager. You cannot do that. So for entrepreneurship, start small. You don't need to be grand. Be ready to change, be ready to accommodate change, and be ready to acknowledge when you need help. It doesn't mean you're failing, it means you're recognizing that, exactly, you're recognizing your gaps, and you find the resources to help you fill those gaps so that you can focus on what you're good at. And things change. The economy changes, the environment changes, your customers change. You have to remodel yourself all the time. But also remodel yourself knowing that with a vision in mind. We can't keep changing all the time. Exactly, I think it's important to have a vision. So that would be my advice.
Wow, well said, Caroline.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you very much for inviting me, for spending time with me.
It's a pleasure for me. Would you be having any statement or proverb in life that guides you, that you'd love to share with us? One that inspires you, every time you think about it and say it out, you feel motivated to work better?
Well, the honest truth on that question, anyway, the honest truth is that the Lord's Prayer is very important for me, and I pray that prayer, and lots of times during the day, Thy kingdom come, Thy will be done. So for me, it's about heaven on earth, God's kingdom, understanding what does great look like, and inviting God to work in me and through me. So that's very personal,
Wow,
but that's
interesting.
my inspiration.
And inspiring.
Yes.
Phillipa, share with our viewers your final remarks, words of wisdom, especially to those who want to become leaders, who want to take up leadership positions. Please share with them your advice.
Okay, well, my key advice is to think hard about what it means to be a leader. So is your leadership position about you getting status or getting wealth? Because if you see it in that way, you actually won't be successful. But if you see leadership to do with giving of yourself, everything that it takes for your enterprise to be successful, you seek first the kingdom of God and the other things get added.
Thanks for all these encouraging and inspirational words. I'm sure those who want to be leaders have learnt a lot from this talk. I mean, Phillipa Forsyth has inspired you. I've been your host, Ashaba, and you've been watching The Shift. Stay blessed.